The future of farming isn't in sprawling fields, it's in reaching for the sky. My name is Ethan Park, and this is the story of how my ridiculous balcony garden evolved into a solution for urban food security. But to understand how we got here, we need to start with a cramped apartment in downtown Chicago. Growing up in a family of successful business people, I was always the odd one out. My father ran a chain of luxury car dealerships. My mother was a real estate mogul, and my brother Michael was already making millions in cryptocurrency by his mid-20s. Then there was me, converting every square inch of our high-rise apartment's balcony into an experimental garden. Ethan, my mother would sigh, watching me install another hydroponic system. You have an MBA from Northwestern. Why are you playing around with plants? What they didn't understand was that I wasn't playing. I was innovating. Every vertical growing space was an experiment, every harvest a data point in what would later become the foundation of Sky Harvest technology. The tension peaked during a family dinner at an expensive restaurant. While everyone discussed property values and market trends, I was sketching irrigation systems on my napkin. Urban farming isn't a real business, my father declared. You're wasting your education. I looked up from my sketch and replied, Dad, by 2050, 80% of the world's population will live in cities. Who do you think is going to feed them? At my startup incubator workspace, I finally found my community. My mentors saw something unique in my approach to urban agriculture. While others focused on traditional greenhouse methods, I was developing integrated systems that could transform any urban structure into a productive farm. The breakthrough came during a particularly harsh Chicago winter. I had been experimenting with different lighting and climate control systems, but I realized we were thinking about urban farming too conventionally. We weren't just dealing with space limitations. We were dealing with an opportunity to reimagine agriculture itself. Late one night, watching my LED-lit plants thrive despite the snowstorm outside, I had my Eureka moment. Traditional farming was tied to the ground, but cities grew upward. What if we could create self-sustaining agricultural ecosystems that could be integrated into any urban environment? I developed a revolutionary approach that combined advanced hydroponics with artificial intelligence and architectural innovation. My system, which I called Sky Harvest, could transform any vertical surface into a productive growing space, using a fraction of the water and energy of traditional farming methods. My prototype caught the attention of Dr. James Wong, a pioneer in sustainable agriculture at the University of Illinois. He offered me research space and resources to develop my ideas further. My family's reaction was predictable. Research collaboration? My brother scoffed. I just closed $1 million crypto deal. But I had stopped seeking their approval. Within months, I had transformed an abandoned Chicago warehouse into our first full-scale vertical farm, my heart racing with possibility. The initial results exceeded everyone's expectations. Our test facility produced the equivalent of 10 acres of traditional farmland in just 1/10 of the space. But what really set Sky Harvest apart was its adaptability. The system could be installed on almost any building, turning urban structures into food-producing powerhouses. Dr. Wong was elated. Ethan, this isn't just urban farming. It's a revolution in food production. Word spread quickly in the agricultural and urban development communities. City planners began requesting consultations, and research institutions worldwide wanted to implement our technology. But it wasn't until the global food crisis of 2024 that our work caught international attention. The crisis had disrupted traditional food supply chains, leaving many urban areas struggling to feed their populations. While conventional agriculture faltered, Sky Harvest installations maintained steady production. Our vertical farms proved remarkably resilient, providing fresh food even when transportation networks were compromised. The United Nations Food Program took notice. Suddenly, I was being invited to speak at international conferences, consulted by government agencies, and featured in sustainability journals. Sky Harvest was being implemented in major cities worldwide, and similar projects were starting in developing nations. Yet my family remained skeptical. Urban gardening isn't scalable, my father said during one of our rare family meetings. You could be running a real business by now. I didn't bother arguing. The results spoke for themselves. By 2025, Sky Harvest had installations in over 50 major cities, providing fresh food for millions of urban residents. Our before and after impact studies were stunning. Neighborhoods that once were food deserts now had abundant access to fresh, locally grown produce. Which brings us to today, standing on this stage at the Global Agriculture Expo, facing a room full of world leaders, entrepreneurs, and yes, my family. Finally here to witness what their hobby gardener had become. My brother's dismissive comment still hung in the air. Ethan's still growing plants on his balcony. But as I looked out at the sea of faces, at the screens showing real-time data from our installations worldwide, I felt only pride. The cameras flashed as I began to speak. 20 years ago, a young man in Chicago believed that cities could feed themselves. Today, I'm here to tell you that he was right. Urban spaces aren't just concrete jungles, they're the farms of the future. And we now have the technology to make that future a reality. I clicked to the first slide, showing the impact of traditional agriculture on the environment. When conventional farming couldn't meet urban food demands, we had to think differently. We stopped fighting city architecture and started working with it. For the next hour, I explained the technology behind Sky Harvest, the integrated growing systems, the AI-controlled environments, the way we transformed urban spaces into productive ecosystems. But more importantly, I shared our vision. We can feed our cities sustainably, I declared. Not by expanding outward, but by growing upward. The solution wasn't in clearing more land for farms. It was in reimagining the urban landscape itself. The presentation ended with recent footage of our installations. Skyscrapers covered in thriving crops, abandoned buildings transformed into vertical farms, communities harvesting fresh produce from their own neighborhoods. The applause was thunderous. Later, at the reception, my family approached. My mother's eyes were wet with tears. "Ethan," she said softly, "we were wrong." So wrong. My father, ever the businessman, had questions about scalability and return on investment. Even Michael, the crypto king, was particularly interested in the blockchain applications we were developing for supply chain management. "You really did create something revolutionary," he admitted, hugging me tightly. With plants, of all things. But the most meaningful moment came when a young entrepreneur approached me, clutching a business plan. "Mr. Park," she said earnestly, "I want to bring Sky Harvest to my community. Everyone says urban farming can't work in our neighborhood, but..." I smiled, remembering my own journey. "Let me tell you a secret," I said. "Every innovation begins with someone believing in possibility. Never let anyone tell you your dreams are too impractical or your goals too ambitious." That evening, I stood on my hotel balcony, looking out at the city skyline. My phone was buzzing with messages, congratulations, partnership offers, interview requests. But my thoughts were on that first tiny balcony garden, where a young MBA graduate believed cities could feed themselves. The next morning, I was back at our newest installation site. Because while awards and recognition are nice, the real reward is watching communities thrive. Every successful harvest, every meal provided, every food desert transformed. These are the true measures of success. My team has grown now. Innovators from around the world come to learn our methods, each bringing their own insights and adaptations. We've expanded beyond basic food production, developing specialized growing systems for medical plants, rare crops, and climate-resistant varieties. The work isn't always easy. We face challenges from skeptics, regulatory hurdles, and technical complexities. But every time I see data showing increased food security in urban areas, I know we're on the right path. Last week, I received a package from my parents. Inside was my first hydroponic setup, the one they had called a waste of time. They'd kept it all these years. Tucked inside was a note. "Dear Ethan, we kept this to remind us of how wrong we were. Your gardening wasn't just a hobby, it was innovation. It was vision. It was a solution to one of humanity's biggest challenges. We're sorry we didn't see it sooner. You didn't just create a company, you showed us a new way of thinking about cities and food. Love, Mom and Dad." I keep that old hydroponic system in our research center now, alongside our latest growing technology and monitoring equipment. It reminds me that great achievements often grow from small beginnings, that innovation shouldn't be measured by conventional standards, and that sometimes the most powerful solutions start on a tiny balcony. As I write this, I'm preparing for another day of expansion planning. My hands will get dirty, my mind will race with new ideas, and somewhere, another urban farm will begin to grow. My brother might still think I'm just growing plants on my balcony, but I know better. I'm feeding cities, one vertical farm at a time. And to that young MBA graduate with his balcony garden, believing in the power of urban agriculture, you were right all along. Keep growing, keep innovating, keep believing. The world needs your kind of vision. Today, when people ask me what I do, I don't say I'm an urban farmer or an agricultural technologist or even a sustainability entrepreneur. I tell them I'm a city farmer, because that's what my work is really about: reimagining urban spaces, transforming concrete into cropland, and helping cities feed themselves. Urban agriculture is thriving, faster than anyone thought possible. Our technology has been implemented in over 200 cities worldwide. The United Nations has set ambitious goals for urban food production using our systems. And every day, more people are beginning to understand what that young man in Chicago knew all along: that cities don't have to depend on distant farms. They can grow their own food. My family now jokes that they should have invested in my gardening hobby years ago. But this was never about money or success in the traditional sense. It was about proving that innovation, when guided by purpose, can transform the way we think about feeding humanity. As I prepare for my next presentation at the World Urban Development Summit, I think about all the other dreamers out there. The ones being told their ideas are too unconventional, their approach is too different. To them, I say, hold on to your vision. Nurture it like a precious seedling, because you never know which small experiment might grow into a solution that changes the world. The cities are growing greener, and somewhere in Chicago, on another high-rise balcony, new innovations are taking root. My niece has started her own hydroponic experiments, much to everyone's amusement. But this time, no one's calling it a waste of time. After all, they know better now. Sometimes the biggest solutions start in the smallest spaces. And as for me, I'm still growing plants on my balcony. And I wouldn't have it any other way. 10 years have passed since that agriculture expo. The Sky Harvest project has exceeded our wildest expectations. Over 70% of major cities now incorporate some form of vertical farming into their urban planning. Food security has improved dramatically, and urban communities report more sustainable, resilient food systems than they've seen in generations. My old Chicago balcony has been preserved as an innovation center, where entrepreneurs come to learn about urban agriculture and develop their own solutions. My parents lead tours there now, proudly explaining how their son's gardening hobby revolutionized urban food production. The young entrepreneur who approached me at the expo? She's now one of our most successful partners, having transformed her community from a food desert into a model of urban agriculture. When I see her working with new communities, that same look of determination in her eyes that I had at her age, I know our legacy is in good hands. Last month, I received the highest honor of my career. Not another business award or UN recognition, but a letter from a community in Mumbai. It contained a seed from their first sky harvest crop and these words: "Mr. Park, you helped us remember what our ancestors knew, that food should be grown where people live. This seed represents the first harvest from our vertical farm. Plant it, and remember that your work has planted seeds of hope in cities across the world." That seed now grows in a special place in our research facility, alongside my first hydroponic setup. It reminds me that every great achievement starts with a simple idea, believing that even the smallest space can yield abundant harvests. To anyone reading this who's being told their ideas are too unconventional, their methods too unproven, or their goals too ambitious, remember my story. Remember that cities need all kinds of innovators, all kinds of solutions, all kinds of growth. And sometimes, just sometimes, a balcony garden can feed millions.